Hi, fanatics. How's everyone keeping? Some content time again. So, usually, when we think about iconic Saint DNAs, somehow get the impression that it started with some luxury brand or some niche brand. But the reality is that sometimes you get iconic Saint DNAs coming out of designer brands. And in the case of Lou DC, for home from Simiaki. This came out in 1994, and that is around the time where we moved away from those heavy smelling, leathery, tobacco-y, barbershop style scents to the fresh scents. So if you recall in one of the videos I did, we looked at the Aqua di Joe Sendiani, which really started that big trend in fresh scent. So this came around all the same time. And this took the world by storm by Japanese designer Simiaki, that brand. And what's interesting is that I would say this scent DNA is still relevant to 2026. And if you smell the scent DNA, you realize a lot of the popular brands, and I can tell you specifically, the Louis Vuitton, you smell the range from their imagination, the afternoon swim. You realize they took a lot of aspects from this said DNA. This is uh, ultra citrus scent DNA that uses the notes of uzu, which is a Japanese type citrus fruit, lemon, bergamot. This is when they did a sense with scent profiles of 20 plus notes. It has mandarin orange, cypress, sage, it has saffron, it has blue lotus, lily of the valley, and it has my favorite notes at the base. It has Haitian vetiver. No, it has vetiver. It has sandalwood and it has tobacco and amber in the base. So this is also a scent that gives you a nice aromatic dry down for men. Classic, still in production. There's some free tweaks, I would say, in the new formulations, but you basically get the same scent profile from the original launch. So there's an excellent choice if you want something daily wear, white t-shirt. You can't go wrong with this. The next in the line from that house would have been the Intense version 8. And basically, what they did with the Intense version of this is that they added some amber notes, some warmer notes, incense into the base. And what you get with the Intense is something that could be used formal, date night, evening. Um, Gives you a nice, luxurious smelling DNA. And the nice thing is just that these are relatively cheap now. You could get these on discounters, less than 40 US. If you're buying it full retail, then you're still going to be paying in the 60, 70, 80 US range, right? But you can get these on online discounters relatively cheap now. Good value for money. Next in the line is the sport version. And for me, the sport version, you could, when you smell the small version, you instantly start thinking sense from, if you smell it from the Louis Vuitton line. Right? There's aspects of this sport version that are very similar to something like afternoon swimmer. Um, in the sport version, what they did with the scent profile is they removed the Uzu citrus, so it doesn't become too citrusy. They put just grapefruit and bergamot on the top notes. And then what they did, they added some nutmeg and leather, and then some ambergris to give it the projection, with vetiver again, and some cedar at the base. So what you get is a nice sporty scent, nothing too loud and overpowering, but you could still get the original scent DNA from the line. This one is a classic. Um, this flanker, and you would see the blue included in it here, is a very interesting one, a very unique smelling scent. Yeah, what they did with the scent DNA, they did some big changes. So they kept a lot of profiles on the base. One of the consistent things here is that they kept a lot of the base profile, but it still changed up. So they added some oak moss here, and some cedar. But what they did in the top and middle notes gives you one of the most interesting scents. So they added rosemary and the top note and lime and lemongrass. And this is a unique smelling scent. You don't see this much in Trinidad. You don't see it often again because I'm not sure if I think this has been discontinued, right? From the three previously, those are still in production. This, sometimes you see it pop up, but I don't think this is currently in production. But if you want something that is fresh but unique, you could use for daily wear. You could basically pull this off formal. This is a good option to try and source. And then we have the most interested on the line. So basically, this is one of the hardest scents to get from the Isimiaki line or the Lu Simi. This is only sold in Japan, right? So it's illegal for anybody to have this for sale outside of Japan. And obviously, the way to bypass that is gray market. And most discount online sellers in the US are technically gray market sellers also. Problem is that this comes along maybe once every year or two, and likely only lasts a day or half a day before it's sold out. Once it's sold out, it ends up on eBay, and the going price for one of these on eBay, let me check. Usually is in the, let me pull it up one time here. Yeah, so first price 250 US for a bottle. So it has people here selling this from 250 all the way. I see somebody selling for they're selling 490. So on eBay you have prices running from 250 US all the way to 490 US for a bottle of this. If you happen to be lucky and get this on the gray market from a US discounter, you could usually pick it up between 70 something and 100 US. But like I say, this will completely sell out in less than half a day once it's available. I know fragrance that had recently that sold out in half a day. A few years ago, a good bit of the discounters they were going at relatively good prices, and you didn't see it for about almost 2-3 years until recently. This is basically the base dry down of the original Saint DNA. And what they did with this is basically added um, saffron, nutmeg, cinnamon, leather. So what you have here basically is a niche smelling Saint DNA that gives you, it's not a heavy niche scent. So you get those lovely blended notes with the saffron and the nutmeg and the cinnamon on the top. And you get that the leather and the cedar in the middle. But it never comes across heavy. It has this freshness, lightness of it, simply because of how they use the cedar and the vetiver together, and then the amber and the vanilla and the tonka bean in the base. So this is, I see this is something that if you're a perfume collector, you want to get a bottle of this or even say that you have smelled this scent, right? Because it's not a scent that you could go in any store in the West and get to smell. And then some years ago, they tried some Frankers in this, and this is basically taking the sport DNA in it, which was this, and they kind of amped it up, added a whole lot of abroxin. So this is when abroxin was the most popular um, note in scents, and obviously the scent that made that popular is Sauvage. Sauvage, that's basically made ambroxan the most popular scent profile. So this arms up with ambroxan. Interestingly, even though it has ambroxan, it's not the biggest projecting scent, but you get some good projection, I would say, in the first 2 hours. After that, it comes closer to moderate skin scent. But first 2 hours, everybody will tell you how wonderful you smell. So that kind of sums up. There's one other in the scent DNA that I never got to, which is the Ludici Fresh or Fresh. So basically, it's this, and before this came out, there was this fresh version that focused a little more on the citrus. I never got a chance to actually smell that. So that's the only one that's missing. There are a few other flankers in between. A spin-off from this line, I would say, more so from taking the intense, is where you get the, what they call the Newt series. And that's our next popular series that I could get into separately on another Scent DNA. So it takes aspects of the Scent DNA and basically brings out an X line on that. But this is really the original Scent DNA. Here, these three that started it off. Thanks all.